Hello and welcome to the KST Healing Hub. I'm Jordania and I'll be your hostess for the day. And I'm thrilled to introduce you to my interview with Professor Charlotte Benson, a true luminary in Jyotish Astrology. As the professor of the American College of Vedic Astrology and the first ever professor of Jyotish appointed by the ACVA Board, her groundbreaking work has made this ancient science both accessible and impactful for all. Honored with prestigious awards, Professor Benson's expertise and passion continue to inspire, as does her wry sense of humor. Let's dive into her remarkable pioneering journey and insights. So please tell me, what initially drew you to Vedic astrology and how has your practice evolved over the decades? So please.
Well, according to the astrologers, hi dear, thank you for that nice introduction. According to the astrologers that I met in India, I ran into five astrologers and five different astrologers in India. Each one of them looked at my chart in utter disbelief, and they said, "Oh, you are a woman practicing Jyotish in America." Yes, that is true. And they each said the same thing, that this is your fifth lifetime studying astrology. And so that made sense to me. There has to be some reason for this obscure interest, but on a more practical level. My father used to take the family out into the backyard, and we would look up and we would watch for the one satellite to go across the night sky. That was Telstar back in the 50s or 60s or way back there. So from my father, I developed a love for the constellations. The constellations, I'm making that point. That can possibly come up later, but I just, as an extension of nature, I love nature. Puppies, kitties, animals, plants, trees, the lawn, anything. And obviously our beautiful solar system is part of that and tied into the larger context as well. It's just fascinating and I started in my darling husband put an astrology book in my hand as a teenager. Yes, I was a teenage bride. I'm that old. But he said, "Here, study this. You'd be good at this." And from that moment, I was captivated, and I started experimenting with clients. My friend volunteers, and it seems that I had some facility for especially prediction. So that's a very useful tool, and I've been a practicing astrologer for over 50 years now. So that gave me plenty of time to find out what works and what does not work.
So you started with Vedic astrology?
No, I didn't start with Vedic astrology because there was no Vedic astrology.
Okay.
Yeah, until the early 1990s. Thanks to my friend, mentor, colleague, Dr. Dennis Harness, who brought the first Vedic astrologers to the Bay Area in 1992. And I came across that as soon as I had been practicing Western astrology for 25 or I don't know, whatever the math is, for a long time before that. But as soon as I came across Jyotish or Vedic astrology, I knew that this was much more accurate, and it is, than Western astrology. And that, if you like.
I love that. I love that. And I love that your husband gave you a book and said you would be good at this. You two were definitely destined to cross paths. Yes.
Yes. God bless him.
And does he have an interest in astrology as well? Is it something you two have shared?
Well, he's no longer with us, but he did. He was interested in everything. He was just a brilliant man. So he made it a point to understand everything. So no, we didn't have that in common. When I got a hold of an astrology book, boy, I just was off and running. There was no looking back there.
You knew that's what you were here
Yep,
to do.
yep, that's right. And
And
I'm very fortunate that way.
you mentioned my certificates, and I know if you shift a little more to yeah, you have this list of certificates. So you've explored astrology, it looks like through many different viewpoints.
Well, I did. And again, beginning with Western astrology, because that was exactly what there was. You had one option. But I knew that legitimate astrology has value to society. And it does not have a good reputation, as I mean, still doesn't. It's it's entertainment only, or there's a lot of cliches associated with Western astrology. And but I still was intending to make this my career, and I knew that there's value in having credentials. So I got every single credential that I could, and doing my best to be a good advocate for the value of authentic astrology to the general public, but from properly educated people. The thing about astrology is that people discover it and go, oh my gosh, this is the best thing since instant chocolate pudding, and immediately read a couple of books and think that they are just ready to roll. And God bless astrologers. They're sometimes slightly undereducated, and then the press gets a hold of this, and it's it doesn't do astrology much good to I I don't I should probably stop myself. I'm sounding kind of critical, but back to the main point is that I saw the value in having credentials. And when clients meet me, if they're on the rare case that they're not a personal referral, they mention that they're happy to see that I have these academic credentials in this profession.
Yeah, it gives a sense of foundation, a sense that you have looked into this deeply, and it makes people feel safe oftentimes. That's all. Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
absolutely.
Yes,
And
I think so too.
through your work, it's shown. I mean, you've been honored with prestigious awards like,
Well, thank you for that question. Well, they I've also spent a lot of time volunteering for astrological organizations. And that's some of these designations are academic, where I, pass the test of knowledge. But some of them are awards, it's sort of like awards for public service in a certain way. But I earned these because showing up. I knew the value of astrology as a freestanding individual, but then also I donated 35 years of my time or something like that to the American College of Vedic Astrology. And that is and so I'm recognized for that. And but it's nice to simply be recognized. I would do it anyway. How that works. You're according to the principles of the Bhagavad Gita, you just do the best you can and don't expect any outcome. I'm paraphrasing naturally, but but what they mean to my personal practice is, well, people love those kinds of things, and I'm honored to be honored, and I would do it anyway. But it's meaningful to me. Being an astrologer is not I when I'm in a social situation, I do not tell people that I'm an astrologer. My family is used to the idea now, and they're proud of me. But the honor, just getting an honor, it's like an Emmy or a Grammy or something. It means you know what you're doing and carry on, I think.
yes, carry on indeed. And you mentioned the importance of education. Um, and for people that pick up a book and feel like they know it, maybe they do intuitively. There's an intuitive aspect to reading, but without the foundation, we can get a little lost. So I didn't hear you as being critical so much as it just helps us not get lost by having those credentials and that experience and the reflection of that through these awards. And you mentioned ACVA and Dennis Harness, Dr. Dennis Harness. Um, how did you two meet? Because he was one of the ones that brought Jyotish to the West, and I'm so glad you found it.
Well, that, thank you, Lord, was my good karma. That, just part of something that's embedded. It was already there that I was going to encounter this some way. But I met him at uh, a conference. Well, I didn't even meet him then. I just saw him across the room. He was at a conference in San Rafael in 1990, early something, and uh, and then we connected in some way. And I think he could see in me something that I couldn't see in myself. But I think he also saw a willing volunteer and somebody that had some degree of talent. And so that process slowly evolved where I was I just there's plenty of work to be done, especially on the conference organizing level. I didn't organize anything. I was the servant. I was very happy to be the servant of Jyotish. In fact, I made a joke the other week. We were at a birthday celebration for Dr. Dennis Harness at a conference where we were both speaking, and I said I have my birth name, I have a couple of married names, I have my spiritual name, but I also I should have another spiritual name, which should have been Dayananda Das. That the suffix Das, DAS, means servant of Dennis Harness, which I was happy to be, because I knew that he has credentials, he has a PhD, and he's a very handsome man and he's charismatic. So yeah, I'm going to hitch my wagon to his star, and that turned out to be a very good thing 30 years later.
Yeah, because he was one of the founders of ACVA, and now you're the president, and he is the president emeritus.
That
So,
is correct. Yes.
yeah, 'cause
Yeah, he really did the hard work of publishing the journals and conducting the certification and exams and overseeing the curriculum development and all that sort of thing. And I was just there saying, yes, we can do it, which
and
is, useful.
you did it, and you are continuing to do it. You mentioned certifications. Do you mind if I ask what role do you believe certifications, like yeah, ACVA, AFAM, ISAR, and NCGR, all of them, what role do they play in establishing the type of credibility you're talking about in
Yeah,
the
they're
field?
absolutely essential. Absolutely essential. And because one can be a real enthusiast about astrology, any type of astrology. But for the benefit of my clients, uh, they make important decisions based on what an astrologer has to offer. Now, in this case, I'm using astrologer and Jyotishi sort of interchangeably. An astrologer, we know what an astrologer is, but a Jyotishi is the Indian name for a person that is a practitioner of Jyotish, the science of light, the Vedic astrology. So, if a client is coming in and it's not like they're necessarily in an urgent emergency situation, but they want to know if we're scheduling surgery, or is this a good time to buy a house, or whatever crucial question they have. If they're going to pay me their good money for me to give them my educated opinion, they want to have that confidence based on the fact that I've endured and somehow passed some rigorous academic requirements. So it's important that way. And as previously mentioned, again, I'm very interested in making a legitimate astrology useful to the general public. It is not. I do have people that come in on their birthday and they bring their girlfriend, and this is what they're going to do on their birthday, and they're going to compare notes after lunch. And yes, it's entertaining, but I warn people, I'm a fairly cheerful person. I have quite a sense of humor, but I'm serious about what I'm talking about. And just the fact that I would bother simply bother to study and sit for an exam, that's it's kind of an expensive proposition to pay tutors and books and time and everything else that's associated with that. So I think it helps legitimize astrology as a viable profession, the certifications do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You did mention that Jyotish has been a wonderful tool for you as far as predictive astrology.
Mhm.
Did you have an intuitive sense about those predictions prior to that, or Jyotish
No,
no?
I
Wow.
do not. No, I do not. I do not. And people say, "Oh gosh, well, I don't know how you got that specific. You must be really
Yeah.
intuitive." I don't think of myself as being intuitive at all, even though I have 4 planets in Pisces, and that's the spiritual sign.
Which ones? I've got.
Which planets?
Yeah. In
Well,
Pisces.
since you asked, the Sun, Jupiter, Mars, and Mercury.
Wow. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. So yeah, all the
So
communication. Yeah.
you would naturally think that yeah, intuitive. I don't feel that way myself at all. It actually, I think of it as quite mechanical. You get this planet to overlap this other static planet, et voila, there is an effect. Uh, it is actually kind of mechanical. At least that's me. Now, those 4 planets that I have in the spiritual intuitive sign of Pisces are also directly contacted by the planet Saturn. And Saturn is very pragmatic, uh, very down to earth, brass tacks, make this has to make sense. So and that's another aspect of astrology. I could say something quaint like, oh, I have 4 planets in Pisces, goody gumdrops. And in addition to that, they are opposed or contacted, not, it's not an adversarial relationship, but they're contacted by the planet Saturn, which is what makes sense, and let's make this work. So I don't know, but for me, maybe people have intuition, but intuition is something that can come and go, isn't it? If you have the basis of a nice square chart here, I don't think you. So here's what we use. I don't think you could see any personal details here. I can't even see them, but this is a diagram that, this is a person's default settings. That's the terminology I use. These planets are your default settings, and these can be changed with age, experience, choices, that sort of thing. But it's quite static, and we know what to expect when certain things happen. So one doesn't necessarily need one's intuition to do this. I wouldn't depend. I personally would not depend on
Be an
that.
incredible gift for people to know that if you have an intuition about it, that's wonderful. But that I think you can critically define it as well.
That's
And
right.
and for our minds as human beings, it's so tantalizing to have things defined. It makes it so much more so real. Now the square, that's the south. That's the south of India.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, listen to how sophisticated you are.
Oh,
Good for you. Yes, this is, I practice the South Indian version where there's a large square chart, because in my mind, I'm turning that back into the circular chart
Hmm.
Western astrologers are used to seeing. So
And you mentioned the opposition of Saturn with your stellium. It's beautiful. And so an opposition is just straight in the circle, it's a 180 degrees up.
that's correct.
It's called an opposition, but you said that term might not be the meaning you would infer from
That's
an
right.
opposition. How can you explain that?
We could say, okay, we could say that Saturn is just opposite those
Yeah.
planets, not necessarily opposite in function, but it's just defining an angular relationship. It puts in this, in the instance that we're using, it puts the planet Saturn is acting with those groups of planets. and throwing its influence on them for with a specific effect. And I mean, if I if that aspect, again, I don't like to use myself as an example, but we're doing it anyway. That if I didn't have that, things would be quite different. I often say, 4 planets in Pisces, thank God for Jyotish, because I'd have to be some kind of criminal mastermind otherwise, or something, some Pisces related thing, or just not doing anything and just hanging out. No, we're not just hanging out. So, but opposite again, I don't know if that made it any more clear.
Absolutely. I thought it was such an important idea that an opposition doesn't have to be bad.
No.
It's neutral. How do you use the tension between and in your case, from my perspective, it sounds like you've taken this intuitive world and brought it into the physical world, defined, readable, and complete. And thus accessible to anyone. I think that's great.
Good. Uh, yes, accessibility. Now that is another thing that's very important. Uh, Jyotish, I think, is the ultimate life hack. I don't like that terminology. It's like you're trying to outsmart something, but timing is so important. Well, first of all, knowing yourself, knowing who you are, accepting yourself. If you're unusual in a certain way, well, you just let your freak flag fly, or whatever you have to do. Or if you're normal, then just carry on being normal. Whoever you are, the planetary placements are a very good indicator of what's under some of these layers of who you are. And then the timing bit. The timing bit is just that's the real genius of Jyotish, I think, or astrology, is being prepared for what you need to be prepared for, and being prepared also to take advantage of something that's coming up, or to take a calculated risk, knowing that there's objective support from your environment, or from nature. That's another thing about the planets. This is not sent to us from some government agency to help us. No, this is provided by nature. And nature teaches us that everything runs in cycles. If you're in a good cycle, it's not going to last forever. Same thing with difficult cycles.
It does tie into something you said earlier that reminded me of the saying, our fate is our fate unless we decide to change it. So, yes. So these cycles of nature can be present for us, can help determine when, where, what. But it's our choice what we're going
That
to
is
do with that
correct.
energy.
Yes. Well, it's like Professor Dumbledore said, it's our choices that make us what we are, not necessarily our talents.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Our
So
talents are shown by the planets, our proclivities, abilities, all those sorts of things. Our natural style is shown by where the planets are. But we can make, yes, I emphasize this to my clients. Every client gets the same caveat, that I'm looking at your default settings, but your thoughts and the grace of God beat the the reactive influences of the planets.
we still have freedom of choice.
Yes, to some degree. I mean, there's certain things that are never going to happen. You and I are probably not going to fly to the moon anytime in this lifetime, but
Dang
you know,
it.
there are limitations, but the ones that are put on us by our own personalities are not really limitations.
Yes, yes. And you, in the beginning, you said in India they were saying a female Vedic astrologer. What? So how do you balance the traditional principles of Vedic astrology with modern interpretations and social structure to make it relevant to us today?
Well, Well, that's always been the case with both of the astrologies. As I'm a contemporary practitioner of Jyotish, I have my own value system, which any practitioner of anything would have their own, bring their own perspective to it, of course. But so my clients most of my clients are Western, although I have some extremely grateful lady South Indian clients who had previously talked to some fairly judgmental male astrologer and wanted to see if whatever dreaded news they had for them was true. And so now I think I offer I offer any client an alternative choice to whatever their whatever their dilemma is. People do not come to see astrologers when they're having a good old time. Well, some do every birthday just to see what's happening. But, mainly they have a problem to be solved. And that's where I come in. But I do, to get back to your question, which I actually remembered, the traditional, well, for instance, there in Jyotish, in Vedic astrology, one of the useful aspects of Vedic astrology is that there are traditional remedies for any planetary affliction. If that's just using just sort of using the medieval terminology. So one of the remedies would be to donate a water buffalo, or to do something really obscure with black sesame seeds at the crossroads. And no, we're not doing any of that. I mean, I'm not doing any of that. I realize that it exists, and I understand the principles involved, but it's up to somebody like me to suggest an equivalent of that. I mean, going back to donating a water buffalo, in case you don't have one of those lying around in the backyard, then it would be something, donate a substantial amount to charity, a substantial amount of money. If you don't have money, your time. But to make the kind of sacrifice, you're showing your intention that you're serious about recovering from whatever the issue is, whether it's health related or financial or emotional, any problem. Astrology, especially Vedic astrology in this case, has options and remedies. So it's up to somebody like me to say, here's the current iteration of that, while respecting the tradition. We're living in the West, most of us, many of us are living in the West. Most of my clients are Westerners, and they want to know real specific questions and some practical remedies. My go-to remedy for anybody can do this for free, is mantra japa, repeating now these are not affirmations, these are the classic Sanskrit mantras. And there are a specific number of mantras that you would chant for an affliction to any given planet. And it's not easy to do that. I mean, you're dedicated, you're intent on changing an outer circumstance. Of course, the first thing you change is your inner consciousness in order to effect an outer demonstration of whatever has changed. But I strongly believe that mantra japa is a remedy. That's a traditional remedy that has not been changed for 5,000 years. Jyotish has been practiced continuously for 5,000 years. That is not an exaggeration. 200 years, but 5,000 years. And so, we have to use our intelligence, common sense, and discretion to figure out what we can alter and what needs to, in terms of the ancient Shastras. The principles remain the same. The effect of Mars is the same now as it was 5,000 years ago, or Saturn, or Jupiter, or any planet. The principles remain the same. And those translate across cultures and time. So it's not really that hard to do. I mean, I respect the tradition. There is the Bible for Jyotish is called Brihat Parashara Shastra, and and the and anything in those two volumes are applicable to current conditions and current dilemmas for clients.
Beautiful. So those ancient practices have modern application, and to your point too, I think it's important for people to make the distinction between um, uh, what you say in the mirror, just repeating positive affirmations are very different than a prescribed mantra.
Yes. But the other thing about these mantras is that you just go on YouTube. I refer my clients to Gaia Sanskrit, G-A-I-E-A Sanskrit, because the pronunciation is very important. But you hear those often enough, and you just sing along. It's like a song. They're very, it's worth the effort to memorize these and one can think them. You can do these mantras silently. But I think I don't know if they're more effective or less effective than vocalizing them. But again, we live in such a wonderful age that, again, YouTube is free. Look up this lady. She has a PhD in Sanskrit from Oxford. You can't go wrong. It's just the effort of doing that sort of thing. And then also not getting in your own way while you're intending to address your own dilemma.
What do you mean by that? Not getting in our own way? That is so important.
Well,
What do you mean by that?
it sounds, you might say, Charlotte, that sounds pretty naive. Just say the Mahamrityunjaya mantra 8,000 times and boom, Bob's your uncle. Well, yes, that's a big part of it. But then while you're doing that, you also don't get in your own way by complaining or slandering or judging things. Now, you might say, oh, that sounds pretty simple too. I'll just not judge anything. Well, okay, good luck. It takes, again, I mean, honestly, literally, good luck to you. But if one's intentions, one's sankalp is very powerful. You know what a sankalp is, don't you?
Well,
A sankalp is a stated intention. So it's not that's not a mantra, but I think again, for your listeners, this is a really practical remedy too, to simply state what you are doing. So for instance, a typical sankalp of mine is I start each sentence with session with the clients by saying, it's my intention to give you accurate, inspired, actionable information, which will improve your life immediately. That's very straightforward. It's broad, but it's also specific. And again, these spoken sankalps help engage the subtle forces around a person, so that you get accurate, actionable information. So that's a remedy or a treatment. But back to the mantras, I highly recommend them to people. There are general mantras, maybe, and again, this is not a religious situation. I do want to emphasize that too. You can be any religion or no religion. You do not have to believe in these mantras. They work. It's like electricity. I also don't believe in electricity, but it works independent of my belief system. So, but I recommend for healing, oh my gosh, they're miraculous for healing. Of course, you're getting your medical treatment, but the question on the table, I think, is how do you not get in your own way? By not thinking negatively, not slandering. If you're going to develop the psychic power of turning words into form, then you can do this. Anybody can do this. It's been done by millions of people. Anybody can do it. You can do it too. But if you're turning your words into form, again, there's no lying, no swearing, no complaining, no irony, no sarcasm, no kidding around, no self-deprecatory words. No, we're not doing any of that. You say, I am successful. Well, don't get in your own way by not acting successful. I'm just use that as an example.
It's a good example. It's a very
I am healthy. You can't say I am healthy and then stay up all night drinking Diet Coke. That's getting in your own way. I'm I'm glad you're laughing, Jordania. I'm serious, but
Yeah. Well, cosmic humor is often serious. It doesn't have to be, um, we can have fun with it.
yes, good.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But with the mantras, you mentioned turning thought into form. Does frequency have anything to do with it? The vibration of the mantra, how do they work?
Well, of course, you probably understand that there are multiple layers of energy fields around us.
Mhm.
And it has just been shown again, I'm talking about the classic Sanskrit mantras pronounced correctly. They have some subtle but profound effect on the environment. Well, the first order of business is they have a subtle but profound effect on your own mind. And your also your intention. You're not sitting around chanting mantra. It's called mantra japa, counting mantras on your rosary, just for fun because you don't have anything better to do. You have an intention, a clearly stated intention to heal yourself in whatever way you need to be healed. But the effect on your environment, the subtle effect on your environment, it's like the effect of a prayer. It's said, well, what I learned is that, or what I was taught and experienced was that a sincere prayer lasts forever. It goes on it affects the entire universe, like each one of the mantras does. The vibration, as you mentioned, is relevant. And I imagine that many of your listeners are sensitive people and could probably perceive these improvements or differences quite quickly, quite readily, because of the frequency and the vibration. And I know that this is kind of a throwback to the 60s, but there is such a thing as vibration and frequencies. But everybody knows about this now. I mean, I hope everybody knows about this, but those mantras vibrate at a certain frequency when they are pronounced correctly with the proper intention. I mean, by proper, I mean, again, let's just use the term healing, I would say.
And do you think that relates to how different body parts are associated with different astrological aspects? Aries, Taurus, Gemini.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yes. And that's actually quite easily seen. If you know what you're looking at. So yes, the different excuse me, the different signs, or rather constellations of the zodiac, do have to do with the body parts. Again, you mentioned Aries. The constellation of Aries has to do with anything above between your nose, the bottom of your nose, and the top of your head. So if you have complex planets in Aries, then we would say you could be subject to headaches or dehydration, or I have to be very careful what I say to my clients. I would not say anything, brain related, but again, staying healthy, making intentional choices for good health is very important. But I would always say something's, sort of all inclusive. If I saw something difficult, just using Aries as our example here, to be depending on the age of a person and other conditions, be regular, be due diligent about getting checkups, or be proactive about that. But also are planets are associated with body parts. So just off the top of my head, speaking of the top of a person's head, so for instance, the planet Jupiter is associated with your liver and the whole hepatic system under your right rib cage. It's also associated with your hips and your feet. This is the planet Jupiter. But as an organ, so if a person came to me, when people come to me, I ask them to not tell me what they're looking for, or not tell me what their problem is, so that I can sort of innocently identify it. Gives them much more confidence that, well, that I know what I'm looking at, and I'm not being led by anybody. But so back to Jupiter, if I all the planets have their happy places, and they have their places where they're not so comfortable. So for instance, if a person had Jupiter in the sign of Capricorn, then I would say, make sure that you are being proactive about your liver health or liver enzymes, or, make sure you're eating more bitter taste to stimulate your liver, or whatever I would tell them. And, prevention goes a long way. I mean, in this case, Jupiter equals liver. Or again, it could be, be do yoga regularly, so you don't have hip flexor issues, or whatever it is. But there's a very good diagnostic tool. And not that long, well, not that long ago. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, there was always the few physicians at that time were also astrologers, and that's how they diagnosed their clients, in case their client actually had a birth time for them, or if the client did not have a birth time, or a patient didn't have a birth time. Jupiter, and to use Jupiter as the example, Jupiter stays in any given constellation for 12 months or 11 and a half, let's say a year. And so anybody that has Jupiter in Capricorn needs to be proactive and due diligent about liver health, watch their hips and or their feet. So it's a very good diagnostic tool as well.
And as you said, always consult your physician, because just because Vedic astrology has been successfully prescribing these for 5,000 or more years, you should still consult your doctor.
Yes, that is correct.
Disclaimer.
Well, yeah.
And speaking of the ancient system, I'd like to loop back to this, but you do have those three astrologers hanging on your door.
Yes.
Who are they?
Well, those are the three wise men. Those are the three wise men. I have a beautiful collection of the three wise men in another part of my house. But when I started practicing astrology in the early 1970s, I would actually get letters. They had these things called letters. They would come to your mailbox, and I would get some hate mail that I was doing the devil's work. I was doing the devil's work. Really? Aren't you ignorant? But because somebody told them that. But I make the point that, okay, everybody remember Christmas time, everybody talks about the Magi. What were these guys that were following the star? What do you think they were doing? Not like they had nothing better to do. They were astrologers, and they understood the meaning of the planetary positions that they'd seen in the sky. And they understood the predictions, the ancient predictions of, what happened then. And, but the astrologers, so maybe you can see, one is old, one is young, and one is black. They came from three different countries, and they were, but I use them as I think these three astrologers are good models for modern astrologers too, because they were kings. And why were they kings? Or, they were nobility, or they're not elevated status of some sort. Why were they that? Because they were very well educated. They showed up on camels. Now, who could afford a camel back in the day? Wealthy people that were doing good work in society. And they were carrying gifts. And, they had enough spare cash to bring gold and other things. That's another story. But the other thing about them is, maybe from the Bible, they saw in a dream, not to go back to King Herod and report where they'd found the little baby. So they have an independent spirit too. Said, now we've been there, done that, seen that. We're going back home now. So those are the original. You can easily make the case that Western civilization is a result of those three astrologers.
So the three astrologers, yes, that's how they found the baby Jesus then, is that
That's
by
right. if
Star.
if they had followed instructions and gone back, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Right.
So thank you for letting me express that, dear. I know that that's an original thought, but I think I could defend my position with that.
I think you could. Absolutely. I love that. Wow. Um, wow. So I'm still shocked that you received that hate mail. I'm shocked, but
Yeah.
why am I shocked? Of
Oh,
course. Of
yeah.
course.
Well, we're in America. People have their very passionate and perhaps unfounded opinions about things. I mean, thank God it certainly did not discourage me. But I have been, held up for uh, held up for ridicule in public places where people want to interview me. Thank God you're being gentle. But people want to interview me and pick on me. They're welcome to do it. I'm prepared. But the reason is, astrology is not the public perception of astrology is mainly due to the inadequacies of people who claim to be astrologers.
Okay.
And for some reason, most astrologers are most interested in giving dire predictions. I guess that's what's, fear sells. We know that. But then when they don't come true, well, nobody cares, or, we seem to have such short attention spans. Nobody's being held accountable for anything they say. But I just, just as a quirky situation here, do you have time for me to give you a little anecdote about something?
Please.
So, I was on a, radio talk show, one time, maybe it was TV, I can't remember, TV or radio. And yeah, they used to have these things called radios. But I was sitting there with the president of, now you speak French and I speak French, so I'll pronounce this properly, Notre Dame University or Notre Dame, whatever you prefer. And so the host thought he would, just, stump the astrologer. They want to know about the outcome of a football game or some kind. I guess it was football. I don't know. I don't care. But so I had my laptop with me. I tippled away there, got a little chart, looked at it, and I thought for about 15 seconds. I said, wow, can they actually lose by 50 points? And of course, the president of Notre Dame was just aghast. And, he didn't call me an ignorant slut, but he might as well. Well, the next day, this a 50 point losing by 50 points is a lot, but they lost by something like 40 points or something like that. So, but did anybody give me credit for that? Oh no, which is fine. I don't care. But they were perfectly willing to denigrate my abilities. If I had been off, then we'd never hear the end of this. But yes, having to defend astrology and the work of the devil and all that sort of thing, it's really too bad. But because astrology is a supremely helpful information system. That's how I qualify it. It's an information system. You can interpret the symbology and apply them intelligently. It can be healing on so many different levels.
Yeah. And you mentioned, so there are many different aspects of healing in astrology. And this adversarial relationship in society, I think is a little newer. Because prior to this, it was taught in higher institutions of learning. It was a part
Yes,
of government. It was an accepted part. So this
absolutely.
divergence, I think now we're reclaiming it as
Yes.
as a healing tool. Of course, we're doing so with many disclaimers, but
Well, that's the better part of wisdom. I don't know everything about medicine, but I do know a lot about if you've got an afflicted Jupiter, you better be careful about what you have your liver filter for you.
yeah, especially if your Jupiter is in Capricorn.
I hope I didn't touch a nerve there, Jordania.
No, no, my Jupiter is not in Capricorn, but I can imagine it. It sounds like an intense placement.
Yes, it just gives people poor judgment. And people with Jupiter and Capricorn just don't believe anything. And that's one of the problems of Jupiter in Capricorn, is that people don't know what, those people just, they reject good advice and they'll immediately go to the bad advice. Jupiter's the planet of wisdom and judgment. So, and that was another feature in 2020. The planet Jupiter was transiting or moving through the constellation of Capricorn.
Mm.
You remember what happened in 2020. It was not good, but that had been predicted long ago. Saturn was in Capricorn, where it's very strong, typically indicating some, as I put it so optimistically, a problem to be solved. So Saturn, the planet of debts and destruction and death, among many other good things, was in a very powerful position. And Jupiter was there just emphasizing the negative traits without providing the the remedy or the solution or the, while it was there for, I don't know, maybe, I don't know when, I forgot now, but well, for the 12-month period, especially while Jupiter was there in 2020.
Yes, yes. It's amazing. It was making that transit in 2020. Mm.
Yeah, that was, now if governments, if astrologers were educated enough to be able to speak to government agencies, they would have said in 2015, oh, look at this, you guys, Jupiter will be in Capricorn. We better make sure we have the infrastructure in place to handle multiple fatalities.
And one way to get this education, of course, you being the president of the ACVA and or American College of Vedic Astrologers, you would learn this information. You would get a very grounded foundation in it. And could you explain a core concept of Vedic astrology that you think is often misunderstood or overlooked by beginners, either well-intentioned or entering the college or following their intuition?
Geez, Jordania, you hit them hard. Okay. A key concept that's ignored. Well, is that basically, we could go way down a rabbit hole on this one, dear, but concept of fate versus free will.
Yes.
That is, again, okay. Do these planets in these positions, are you fated to live this out? Yes, you are, unless you are using your consciousness. If you are unconscious and being passive, yes, the planets will have their way with you. But I know it seems sort of ironic for somebody like me looking at a chart and going, oh, darn, your Jupiter is in Capricorn. Now you got to be very careful about the things that we just talked about. But I would emphasize the dimension of grace, which alters, again, the mechanical influences of the planets. And again, it's incumbent upon any healer or any helping professional to develop themselves spiritually so that they can, so that they can do their work. And, it's up to not only the translation, but the interpretation of these planetary positions. And and a person has to be fairly well, or at least striving to become spiritually developed themselves so that they can understand how to deliver the information, which can be altered. Now, I know I say this to my clients. I understand. I go, I'm talking to them for 45 minutes and I go, okay, now listen to this. So I understand this might sound ironic, but I say, but you can actually change all of that. Yes, is this a good time to buy a house or do IVF, or astrology is particularly good for timing IVF procedures, to veer off for a moment. But again, wisdom erases karma. If where the planets are is your embedded karma, the fact that you have the objective wisdom about the situation, this, let's call it a situation, enables you to respond in a different way, to respond and not react. So that, okay, so I think back to your, I'm not sure if that was helpful.
Yes. Yes. Again, it goes back to freedom of choice.
Well,
It goes back to
again, within the, certain parameters,
within certain parameters.
subject to, in Vedic astrology, there's the influence of the time, the culture, and the place. The time, the culture, and the place.
Yes, yes. But at least those Jyotish signifiers, those planetary signifiers, can give us a hint of what we're working with to give us actually a better opportunity to choose within, like you said, our culture, our circumstances, and all of that. Yeah. Whew. It's not.
Yes,
Mhm. And you mentioned earlier the Bhagavad Gita. So, like it teaches there, we take the action within our circumstance.
that's right. And leave without any expectation of the outcome. Do
Without,
the best you can. That's all you can do. Again, paraphrasing fairly broadly.
it's, yes, yes, very healing. And do you have any other advice to give aspiring astrologers? Maybe someone that hasn't even opened a book, or they've opened a book and don't quite know what to do with the inspiration they've received.
Well, I do happen to have a bit of advice that read as much as you can. Do if you have the desire to become a practicing astrologer, please do that. The world needs more good, trained, intelligent, articulate consulting astrologers, Jyotishis in this case. Um, uh, being a successful practicing astrologer is a viable option these days. I would say read as much as you can, get some software, practice on as many people as you can, get yourself properly educated and certified. Yes, there's a lot of there. I mean, if one is interested in becoming a practitioner, I highly recommend it. Why not? It can be done. I'm living proof that it can be done, even going back to the early 70s. I'm not saying that it was easy, and that's irrelevant. But if a person has this, if this turns out to be their vocation, their calling, that can be extremely helpful. And some of it is not really that difficult. It's not really that difficult. Again, there's a lot of memorization, and you have to do your reading yourself. You have to have the proper intention. I mean, well, you don't have to do anything, but I watch my words carefully most of the time. And but I would say learn as much as you can about everything. A good astrologer, a good consulting astrologer has to know about everything. Other cultures, other languages, economics, geography, history, politics, history. I know I mentioned that twice. There's a reason for that, but and improve a person's vocabulary. Improve your vocabulary. The more precise you can be, the better the information, and the more useful the information will be to whomever you're talking to. And if you're studying astrology for your own self-edification, just to find out who you are, I mean, that's a fascinating topic. Me. What does it mean to me? It's all about me. Yes, well, this can sort of objectify who you think you are. And also, that's the end of that paragraph, but here's a very important point too. I do a lot of remedial work for clients that come in to say, somebody told me that this horrible thing was going to happen. Well, I'm so sorry that happened to you, and let me help you out here. But I've noticed, I guess maybe it's the human condition to just look for the worst. Especially beginners looking at their chart and going, oh, bummer, Saturn, Mars. Well, please look at something else. If they don't like that, look at something else. There's plenty to look at. in any one of these maps of the sky.
That need to focus on the negative isn't serving us as well as it did. So we need to consciously maybe shift our focus more to the positive aspects of even the malefics.
That
As
is correct,
yeah,
because none of this is punitive. All of these cycles operate in nature. When the leaves fall off the trees, as they sometimes do in September, this is not tragic. Okay, yes, you have to rake the leaves, just deal with it. But again, we know that there will be spring. Any current condition that's operative now, we know this from studying history, that sometimes in the ancient Vedic Shastras, there's two categories of beings. One's called the gods or the not gods. Gods or the not gods. I love that idea. It's not judgmental. It differentiates. But sometimes the gods or the devas are in ascendance, and sometimes the not gods are holding power. But we know for sure that these cycles go around. Is if the not gods are in power now, they're not going to be in power forever.
and in this
Just so subtly.
and in this context, what is God's referring to?
Well, God's referring to the instinct of evolution or peace, harmony, intelligence, grace, abundance, as opposed to fear, sense of lack, guilt, fear being the main. I think again, I'm fairly simple-minded and like to reduce things to the essential core. I think that the God feature would be love, and the not God feature would be, or characteristics would be, fear. I think if you boil everything down, those are the two diametrically opposed energies, love or fear.
So back to the 60s. Choose love. Let's all please choose love. So back to
Yes, please. But that sounds so simple, but fear sells. Fear is stoked everywhere, in medicine, in politics, and everything. Economics, fear sells. And I think that's a natural human default emotion or reaction. But again, I tell my clients, please choose your thoughts wisely. What? You can choose your own thoughts? Yeah. One chooses one's own thoughts. And it takes some consistent practice to do that. But I mean, why not? Choose to be, I don't know, choose peace or choose contentment. And that's not settling for less. But, we're all, well, what goes around comes around. And our environment is merely a projection of our own thoughts. So, I mean, this is basic metaphysics. We know all that, but I would say go back to the basic metaphysics, choosing your thoughts wisely. As within, so without, as above, so below. Yeah, there's that famous aphorism, as above, so below. As the planets and stars are, that's what's going to happen below. But additionally, as within, so without. Those two have to go together. Those two phrases have to go together. They don't have to, but I would advise it.
Yes, yes. And that does go back to mantra. That does help us get in line with the ability to choose our thoughts.
Exactly.
Okay, so choose thoughts, choose peace, choose love, choose contentment. That's the suggestion of Professor Charlotte Benson, and I think I will take that advice.
Well, that's what I do. And yes, it takes constant monitoring to keep your thoughts clean, and therefore one will be healthy and useful to the world. That's, again, people can be useful to the world, I think they'll be healthy. You have to be healthy to be useful to the world. If you're useful to the world, then you are by definition healthy as well. I
Yeah.
think.
Yes. Excellent. Excellent thought to sort of have some closure to this interview on. Thank you so much for your time. And I know people can certainly contact you through the American College of Vedic Astrology, but what about for a personal reading? How can people get a hold of you?
Well, I'm pretty easy to find if you remember my name, which is Charlotte Benson. I think if you just typed in Charlotte Benson astrologer, you'd probably find me. Um, my website is my name, Charlotte Benson. I do take new clients, so I'm here to serve. So and I'm accessible. My fees are really reasonable. I mean, there's back to the Saturn part, many of my colleagues are sort of out of touch for most people. I mean, in terms of their fee structure, but I live a simple life. I'm here to serve, and financial accessibility to me is part of that.
I love
So
it.
just as a practical matter.
Yes. Yes.
So yes, I'm easily found, and I take new clients, and I'm here to help.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful you came into this life to do this work and that you have done this interview. It's been wonderful to get to know you.
Well, bless your heart, Jordania, and right back at you. What you're doing is a labor of love, and appreciate your contributions as well, dear. So carry on.
Thank you.